Hello, welcome to a new episode of Writing Off the Deep End.
I'm Mary.
And I'm Geoffrey.
And thanks for joining us today for talking about writing practice.
Right, so how do you actually set about doing your work on writing on any given day?
Walk us through it. So you get up in the morning. When does the writing happen? At what point?
Well, I'm not a good example. I think we should start with you first because mine's a very sort of eclectic. You know, I work full time, so writing is
it has to fit
is slotted in around the working environment.
Well, I get up, I put the kettle on, I get dressed, I turn on my computer, and then I procrastinate.
Because I thought you wrote by hand, at least some of the time.
So it really depends. This morning when I got up, I did turn on the computer first. And the reason was writing by hand for me is the first draft. And once it's written, then I type it up. And then I start the editing, and that has to be done on the computer. Right. Now, the notebook is always beside me. Some pages of my notebook, I think an outsider could open them up and read something that was fairly coherent. It's a scene from the story, or it's a scene from the novel. Some pages of my notebook are just disjointed words, and it's gotten more so. I think this is something that's developed in my writing practice. Just fragments of a sentence, and I don't think even going back a week later, I would know what it was about, what I was even trying to do. But whatever it was something that worked, because then it went into the clean version, which is the electronic version.
Okay. And do you write for a set amount of time?
My goal is 8 hours a day. I said to myself, Mary, it's your job. Other people have jobs. They go into an office. This is your job. You're going to do 8 hours. I don't always do 8 hours, but I try.
But not 8 hours in a straight thing. You must take breaks or...
Well, things will come up to interrupt it. I need to go to the grocery store, or I have a lunch date with a friend. I also give myself breaks when I reach certain milestones. Usually it's a page. If I filled a page of my notebook, even if I've only filled it with disjointed jottings, that's still a bit of a marker of work has been done.
Right.
So then I get up and I fix myself a snack.
Okay.
And that's my break.
And 7 days a week, or?
Yes. 7 days a week, but I have a few other little goals. This is all going to sound terribly structured, and I know that lots of writers have this very spontaneous, free-flowing style, but I'm a bit of a spreadsheet person. I'm a bit of a rules person, and I think...
So you're not a pantser, as they say? Was a plotter or a pantser?
Oh, well, okay, let's say this. My work time and my work activities are very clearly scheduled, but the writing itself is something different. I don't do outlines. I don't do character lists or things like that. I don't do those before. Sometimes I do them after to try to impose some clarity on this mess. So the weekdays are for writing and editing and research and so on. On Saturday, I try to send something in. That doesn't always work, but that's a goal. Send something to a magazine, send something to an application for something.
So that usually means actually finishing dotting the I's and crossing the T's and finishing the piece to send it, which is
submit.
Which is interesting to make time for that, because I never do. So
it helps. Like I said, I'm pretty structured, so that keeps me very structured to always have something sending out. And Sundays are for reading. Sundays are for reading that supports my writing. I guess what I've described sounds like a pretty exacting schedule, and I don't always succeed. It's an ideal. And what's really important, though, is that when I haven't written 8 hours, I didn't write 8 hours yesterday, about 6.5, but I forgave myself. It's really important as a writer to know how to forgive yourself, because you're going to have these grand visions that will always be out of reach, whether for your work habits or for your writing output or whatever. And so to keep going as a writer, you just have to try and fail and forgive yourself and try again.
And go back to it.
Yeah.
And so you have time goals rather than word number goals.
Yes. Yeah. That is what works best for me. And I know a lot of people, these word count goals work really well for them. But for me, I don't actually have a problem generating writing. I can fill a page pretty easily. The things that I have trouble with and that I try to focus on are editing and shaping a coherent and gripping narrative. Like, that's really challenging for me. And so some days I don't need to write 3,000 more words. I need to take an existing piece of writing and I need to take out 3,000 words.
Understood.
I have negative word count goals more often than I have positive word count goals. Or I need to sit down and write that outline in post. Like I said, I don't do outlines before. I usually wait until I've got some huge messy manuscript, and then I have to sit down and say, what was the climax here?
Yeah.
What was the turning point or the moment of decision, and wrest it into a shape. And that's not going to show up on a word count goal, but I've still worked hard that day.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So, now word count goals, I know you found them useful in some of your projects.
I do, but I tend to, so to come back to my situation, I work full time, but it's not a very structured day.
Yeah.
As a scientist, I'm pretty well my own boss in terms of how I organize my time. So I have a certain amount of work that needs to happen, and so, but when it happens is up to me.
Yeah.
So, and I don't always. I used to go into the office all the time. For the last several years, I haven't.
Yeah.
I tend to work from home, even on the science stuff, and I go in to the office for meetings when I have them.
Yeah.
So it gives me a lot of flexibility to work between the writing and the science. So I tend to write mostly evening. I'm not a very morning person anyway.
Yeah.
So morning I'm generally up and dealing with, emails and science and all the rest of it. And the afternoons are often meetings where I have to go in for. But often like a mid-afternoon or late afternoon, 3-4ish, I'll take my iPad to a cafe.
Yeah.
And I'll install myself and I'll do 2 hours of writing in a cafe.
Yeah.
And it's not usually revision at that point. It's usually raw writing something.
Yeah.
What I love about cafes is just being surrounded by people, because writing is a very lonely activity most of the time. So I like to have a little bit of time among other people to write.
It's pseudo-social.
It's pseudo-social, yes, exactly. You're very on your own writing, but you're in a group. Not every day, but easily 3 or 4 days a week. And then I'll come home, make myself something to eat, and then I'll set up my evening for writing, usually. When I was a young man and I wrote, I set myself word goals.
Yeah.
So many words a day. But I've stopped doing that. When I started working on this large science fiction project, I thought, I should set a word goal and do that. But I find that if I don't write for several days, which does happen because of the work environment, I get to a point where I actually have to sit down and write. Otherwise, I'm going to go bananas.
It's built up.
And so this need to write is in me, and I can rely on it to produce the work without needing to set myself these goals in terms of a number of words. So, and I found over the years, I'm extremely productive in my writing. So
that turned out not to be your problem.
It's not the production, it's maybe the revision that I need to work on, but I'm learning to like that too. So I have lots of projects going on at the same time. That's one of the ways I work. So I have several novels on the go. I have novels that are being written for the first time, and I have novels that are being revised.
Oh, so this is an interesting question. How many projects do you have going at a time?
In terms of the novels, I have a lot of novels on the, so I have, I actually have 21 novels under construction. But in terms of any one time, I'm focusing on 3 or 4 of them.
Okay.
For, say, several weeks, working on a particular group, and then one will get to a point where it needs a different kind of treatment, and it will be set aside, and I'll pick up something else.
Yeah.
And any one day I'll be mostly doing one activity. So I'll either be writing first draft material, or I may decide that there's a project that needs revision, and so I'll focus on the revision. So I rarely work more than maybe 5 hours max. I never work more than 5 hours max. I've done these competitions that you've got me into, these 3-day novel contests.
The marathons.
The marathons. But even there, I will write never more than, say, 4 hours, and then take a 2-hour break before I go back to it, because the brain sort of runs out of steam.
So how much break to how much work time is something that we all just need to find out.
Yeah, and I probably have more breaks now than I used to. Maybe that's partly age, I don't know, but...
But it doesn't seem to have impeded your productivity. So it seems to me like you've found your balance point.
Yeah.
So just like we did with episode 5, I think we've decided to split writing practice into 2 pieces. So the first part we looked at Mary's daily practice in terms of writing and mine and how they contrast with each other. Part 2 is looking at the process of revisions to some extent and outlining and this kind of thing. I think we did talk about that in episode 1. And then also the idea of doing a writer's journal about the route taken when one's producing the work. So
we hope you'll join us for that next episode.
And don't forget to click on the button if you're interested below the screen, if you're interested in subscribing to the series.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.